Is there something particular about demo days that maybe um creates a kind of vulnerable environment, which then kind of like foster more of a bond for people who do go to these things and participate?
Um, I definitely think that, at first people are putting themselves out there. They don't know if what they're going to demo is really good. And it usually is people with back end demos. It's
Mm,
like, but I don't have a UI. It's just going to be command line. And I said,
mm,
you know, everyone's going to understand. It doesn't have to be flashy. If
yeah.
you've made something 10 times faster than it was before, that it doesn't have to be earth shaking. It
Mm,
can, it can be the smallest thing. What it does is builds the safety
mhm,
and also this increasing level of confidence and pride. So people are willing to try more things,
mm.
which means you're unlocking more of their innovation and more of their capability, which is really, when I look at it, ends up being the core of my job.
Welcome to Peer-to-Peer's Spotlight Series. Spotlight Series is a platform for hiring managers, referrers, and candidates to showcase their talents and opportunities within the startup ecosystem. In this episode, we sat down with Tim Collins, the Vice President of Engineering at Federato.ai. He's currently looking to hire full-stack engineers. Tim shares some highlights along his illustrious career path from being the CTO of Metromile to honing his leadership principles at Google and Meta. He emphasizes creating a psychologically safe environment as his primary job and the importance of simplifying complex problems. Tim also shares his excitement about Federato and the opportunity to redefine the insurance industry with data-driven solutions and AI. If you have someone you'd like to refer to Tim, please use the refer option or I'm interested for the opportunity postings available on his profile page. If you're looking to be featured on Spotlight or know someone who would benefit from our service, please reach out to us at intro@peertopeer.app. All the information is included in the description below. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Learn more about you and also learn more about Federato.
Thanks so much, Trissa. Yeah, I really appreciate the chance. What can I
Uh,
tell you?
yeah, I mean, you've spent time you've had quite a long and illustrious career. You've spent time at some of the bigger companies like Google, Meta, and you've also kind of well, I guess it's not quite bookend because your career is still ongoing, but at least until now, it seems like you've started out as, in smaller companies, you were the CTO at Metromile, and then now you kind of went back to Hive before um, Federato and now Federato. So it seems like there's a trend
Yeah.
of like moving back to smaller companies. What are your thoughts there?
So I think it says something about really what drives me fundamentally. And so maybe I'll take you back to the beginning. Um, I've sort of been really lucky in that I've sort of gotten a version of the American dream. We
Mm,
moved to the US from Australia because of opportunities for my father in the US. He
wow.
loved technology. So we got our first home computer when I was 10. So I learned to program.
Mhm.
I thought I was going to do archaeology because I loved Greek history. So that
Wow.
was the plan. I'm going to do archaeology. And just before applying to universities, my father said, well, you know how to program. Why are you going to do archaeology? You should probably do computer science,
Mm,
which seemed quite obvious in hindsight, but at that point was really a big decision. So went to do computer science, and I was, super lucky that I went to Berkeley. And at that point at Berkeley, CAD was the huge thing. We're going to
mm,
build bigger and bigger and more complex, chips
yeah.
that'll make more powerful computers.
Like,
And so that really started me on this journey of anything's possible and impact is super, super, it's like a drug.
Yeah.
I'm a
Uh,
impact addict.
mhm.
So that took me to my PhD. I thought I was going to do AI.
Mhm.
AI was just not that exciting back then. I know I'm
Sure.
not even allowed to
Yeah.
say that, but it was really true. And instead, what seemed like fun was hooking computers together to build low cost distributed systems.
Mm,
And so that was what I was working on. And suddenly the internet started. That changed everything. And
right.
really, that has been the story from then on out, which really was always looking for huge problems where internet technology was going to create massive capabilities that were really exciting and useful.
And
And I became a real fan of beautiful user interfaces from the perspective that it made technology invisible. And for me, that was the key. It wasn't the technology that was the goal. It was technology feeling like magic that empowered people. And so that was my story. It's taken me through, I'm now at my 10th startup at a bunch of big companies. And it's that draw of impact that it keeps on, pulling me one way or the other. So yeah, I was at a startup that I'd been at for a while that was good technologies. It used to be
yeah.
Visto. We were making push email available for the masses, right? But back
Yeah.
then, if you wanted your email, you bought what? You bought a BlackBerry, right? But have it on any phone seemed amazing. And I got an offer to go to Nokia and run all messaging applications for Nokia and suddenly have the code that my team created running on hundreds of millions of devices.
Wow.
That was super exciting. So that took me from a startup to Nokia. And then Nokia at the end, I, started with a friend looking at collecting data from cars and what could we do that was valuable. That was Metromile.
Nice.
Metromile, was an amazing experience. In
Yeah.
fact, it shaped, a lot of my thinking that ended up bringing me to Federato.
Mm.
But then I got the opportunity to run the big data infrastructure at Google and deal with exabyte scale. It was sort of, super, super exciting. After being at Google for a couple of years, I created a startup at Google. So when I
Oh,
say
wow.
10 startups, I guess it's 11 really.
Yeah.
Um, it was one day when I was walking down a street in San Francisco and I was seeing
Mm,
all the help wanted signs in small businesses and it piqued my interest. Why are there help wanted signs? Right? We
mm,
solved this problem.
yeah.
It's all digital. You don't need signs.
Right.
And did a little bit of investigation and found out that matchmaking between small businesses and hourly workers wasn't being done.
Mm,
There was no solution. So that got me excited about internet technology creating, some value for hourly workers and small businesses. And I got funded at Google to build a startup.
wow.
And yeah, so I I get pulled by where there's excitement to create real value. And then, where the impact is the greatest so that I'm spending my time really in what I think is the wisest way to create outcomes that I'm proud of.
Yeah, that's a really good story. I think when you were talking about the messaging app on Nokia, I think my earliest reference for that is probably AOL Messenger or
Oh,
IRC
yeah.
perhaps.
It was
Uh,
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was huge. Yeah,
yeah, which is
back in the day.
yeah, and it's amazing how these platforms, how far these platforms have come with messaging. Um,
Absolutely.
I'm curious, like as you're kind of going in between, um, the startups and then like the bigger companies, and obviously, you mentioned you also started one at Google. What are some of, I guess, principles that you would, you know, um, say are different from operating, let's say, at a startup versus, at a bigger company like Google? Or are there overlapping principles?
Yes, really good question. So I would say that most of my management and leadership principles, I really developed them most at the large companies.
Hmm.
And it was sort of the structure and the opportunity to get some great mentoring and learning. I think on the other side, sort of my expectations and sort of excitement of how amazing engineers can be, I've discovered more at the startup world, even though I've had some amazing experiences in large companies also.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so, what I was lucky at Google. My first team was one of the guinea pig teams for something that was called Project Aristotle at Google. Google was trying to figure out what makes an effective engaged team.
Hmm.
And that was an amazing experience because my intuition didn't really match what came out of that whole experience, which really was that psychological safety was the number one thing for having high performing teams. And
What was your Oh, sorry, what was your assumption, I guess, going into, did
so
you have
my assumption was people stay in teams because they like the people they work with. That is fundamentally the driver. And I think there's some overlap between psychological safety and the people you work with, but it's a little deeper in that really encouraging and providing an environment for people to become their best them
Mhm.
has really stuck with me. And it's let me sort of experiment in lots of ways. No engineers have been harmed in these experiments, but I've gotten to discover some great stuff. So one of the sort of the techniques that I've taken with me that I discovered in Google when I was building the tools in Google Fiber, we were taking on massive problems and trying to do it in a very innovative way. How do you build networks at scale serving
Mm.
hundreds of millions of people ultimately, uh,
Mhm.
but do it in a new way?
Yeah.
And it during our sort of get-togethers, our all hands, people would tell a little bit about some of the ideas they were working on and sometimes even do a demo.
Mm.
And someone, I can't remember who it was, who said, "Hey, why don't we just have a demo meeting?" And, for me, it was like, "Oh, why not? Let's try it." And so first we had this demo meeting, and it was like, "Anyone have any demos?" And it was pretty quick.
Mhm.
The next time we did it, it went a little longer. Ultimately, it was such a popular meeting. We brought food and drink and started giving gag gifts.
Nice.
And after every demo, everyone would applaud. And that
Mm.
kind of support and environment meant that new engineers, new to Google, straight out of university, three
Yeah.
months in, were willing to demo something in front of 80 of their peers in a room.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the power of that was amazing. And so um, I love demo days. They're on Fridays. And it's usually people say it's their favorite meeting of the week.
Nice. So it sounds like from that experience, the takeaway was to create a psychologically safe environment so that everybody is comfortable to participate, feels comfortable to participate, and is there for one another. Sort of
Absolutely.
demoing. Yeah, I'm curious. Like, is there something particular about demo days that maybe um, creates a kind of vulnerable environment, which then kind of like uh, foster more of a bond for people who do go to these things and participate?
Um, I definitely think that, at first people are putting themselves out there. They don't know if, what they're going to demo is really good. And it usually is people with back end demos. It's
Yeah.
like, but I don't have a UI. It's just going to be command line. And I said,
Uh,
you know, everyone's going to understand. It doesn't have to be flashy.
mm,
People, they're engineers. If
yeah.
you made something 10 times faster than it was before, that's super exciting. And I think once you build that feeling that it's safe, that everyone's going to applaud, that it doesn't have to be earth shaking.
Maybe.
It can be the smallest thing. What it does is builds the safety
Mhm.
and also this increasing level of confidence and pride. So people are willing to try more things,
Mm.
which means you're unlocking more of their innovation and more of their capability, which is really, when I look at it, ends up being the core of my job. Yeah, I've sort of simplified, my job in, into this very simple story
Mhm.
of, when people, it's time for them to leave and go somewhere else, because that time always comes.
Yeah.
If they can say, while they are working in my team, that
Mhm.
they grew as an engineer and feel like they're actually a better person, happier with themselves than they
Mhm.
were when they started, success. I really feel like I've done my job. And no doubt they've also done the right thing for the company along the way. So it's always a win-win.
Yeah, that is so great to hear. I think one of the things that is hard to do actually at a startup is hire the right hiring manager. I can't tell you how many, I guess, war stories I have there, but I'm so excited for Federato that they have you as their engineering leader who sets a great tone. I'm curious, in as you're looking for more people to join your team, are there certain characteristics that you're looking for? Maybe even a few that you're not looking for would be great to share.
Absolutely. So it goes back to something you said earlier, Chris, about, but how do you make remote work successful?
Hmm.
And I think there are a lot of people have a lot of ideas, and it's not easy at all. When I was at Facebook, Meta,
Hmm.
I was building the HR tools for employees, and I became essentially the TL for remote work, well, how we were trying to implement it during the pandemic. And that was a real learning experience. It was clear that a company that hasn't started with remote work as being a core principle,
Hmm.
you can't just move to remote work and expect it to work. It doesn't.
Right.
Federato was built during the pandemic. It was remote first to begin with.
Hmm.
And so the company attracted people who fortunately were able to be very engaged, driven, and positive communicators in a kind way.
Hmm.
And so it sort of started with the right approach. And that's what I've been doubling down on. I'm trying to find people who are going to thrive in that environment.
Hmm.
To do that, they, I mean, our process is really simple. We have 3 pillars in our interview process after I screen everyone.
Yes.
So I screen everyone uh, with the goal of only letting people to the 3 pillar
Uh-huh.
interviews if I believe they have a better than 50% chance of being able to get through the process. Those aren't really accurate numbers. I screened I think 2,400 candidates, hired 14 last year.
Wow.
We're
2,400 for
Yeah.
4.
I didn't speak to all of them, of course, but I did speak to hundreds of people last year. This year, probably hiring somewhere north of 20 and already well into that process. So, what I'm looking for in candidates is evidence of strong technical capability, clear and concise communication,
Mhm.
passion and drive. That's they're going to get excited about something, and they're going to really invest and engage in it. And the hardest thing, which is one of the top characteristics for me, and if you can tell me how to identify this easily, I would love it. I'm looking for a mindset of simplicity and common sense. I'm looking for that ability to simplify problems, not come up with complex solutions. That's the hardest thing to interview for, but that's almost the most important thing to find.
Yeah, I would love to double click there. So, simplicity, can you, I guess are you mainly referring to coming up with simple solutions for complex problems? Or
Always
where are
starting
you
with
seeing
simple
people
starting point.
fail in this assessment?
So what I find is when you start asking people about, the hard problems they've solved, occasionally you hear this thread of, I realized that, people were trying to make this too complex. There was this simple thing that was going to make it all much better. It may not be perfect, but it
Mhm.
was simple. And
Yeah.
I'm always listening for where they've been able to simplify and understand the core of the problem and attack that core in a very simple way. That approach is much more scalable. Complexity doesn't scale,
Yeah.
simplicity does.
Yes.
But I don't know how to interview for it in a consistent way. Uh,
Mm.
red flags. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Number one red flag is, and this could, people can be nervous. I totally understand that. My screen is 30 minutes long. I tell them, what I'm going to do. When people really, I ask a question, tell me the top whatever. And they
Mhm.
say, oh, I have 3 examples. When I'm asking, tell
For
me
one.
one,
Yes.
be
Yes.
concise and tell me one, because we've got such a limited amount of time to sort of see if it's going to be a good match. Um, the second, which I guess is a very unpopular thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, just to be frank.
Yeah.
if people bring up work-life balance being one of the most important things in selecting a job, we're the wrong place,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's not that we work people to death. I think we're actually pretty kind. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't think people work the hours I've seen at other startups.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's that if that is the top question someone's asking, then they're not looking for engagement and passion.
Right.
And there are 9 to 5 jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and that is perfectly okay if, this is a mechanism for funding what you really want to do. And therefore, you want to make sure you're spending that time doing what you want to do and not, you know, the funding activity. And that's fine. It just won't work for us.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that being a red flag. I'm gonna have to get back to you about the how to assess for simplicity to complex questions, but after
It would
doing some
save me so
research,
much
I
time.
will get back to you. This is actually a great segue to, you mentioned that um, Metromile kind of set you up really well for Federatos. What's got
Yeah.
you excited about Federato, for you to join them? And also, what are some of the exciting progress that you guys are making that you can share?
Yeah. So what was the realization we had early on in Metromile? And this gets down to, what's the big story? And so how do you simplify and get to the essence?
Mhm.
You hear that as a theme, I know.
Yeah.
So when we were investigating, collecting data from cars and how could it be valuable, we realized that all of auto insurance came in one shape and size. 6 months of time. That's what auto insurance is. It's 6 months of time. Someone
Hmm.
must have decided that at some point. I don't know. Because that's the only thing that's sold.
Yeah.
And we realized via data, we could change the dimension. Instead of time, we could make it distance. And distance gave us two really interesting ideas. One, it would allow us to define a new kind of product that would be very suitable for a portion of the market, those people who drive fewer miles. And it gave them control over their insurance costs that they'd never had before because it's based on how much you drive. The nice thing about a data-driven insurance product, if you choose the right target group,
Right.
the risk is more controllable, and it's not this smearing of risk across all, individuals in the pool,
Hmm.
right? My insurance is high because there are lots of people doing stupid stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This made it different. That realization that you can take a data-driven approach to building better insurance products that actually you can charge less for and are
Hmm.
still profitable
Hmm.
is a win-win. So that was an interesting idea to explore. When I was exposed to Federato, it was like, wait a minute, this is a decade over, after
Hmm.
I dealt with auto insurance,
Yeah.
and the insurance companies are still doing everything in Excel. They don't have real-time data. Climate change means that their static models just don't work.
Hmm.
So, the stories in California of, oh, because of wildfire, you can't get, insurance.
Hmm.
It's this broad strokes where the inability to have a data-driven approach to building and managing and deciding pricing about products
Yeah.
means that it's inflexible. And insurance has to become flexible and data driven. And so that was at its core the huge opportunity that I saw that, wow, we still can move towards actually a real-time internet-driven, platform for insurance companies. They benefit, and those being insured benefit if we can do a bunch of things. So that was what piqued my interest. And then, there were two things that have, well, even three that made it very exciting.
Mhm.
First, it goes back to something we were discussing earlier, and, probably um, culture and people.
Mhm.
What I discovered was that people were kind and collaborative in a positive way. And so I enjoy meeting with the people because they're, yeah, they're just people you actually like to, speak with.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not always true.
Right.
Yeah. Um,
Absolutely.
the second thing is, I saw as we started to, the product was launched pretty much when I started.
Mhm.
And so we were at the very beginning. And then we launched customer after customer after customer. And I could see that we were changing the way they were thinking about running their business.
Mm.
And so it was the initial evidence that, well, not only that there's value, there's been strong evidence of that, but
Mhm.
we can create that win-win ultimately. And then the third thing was really this interesting challenge, which was, okay, this platform that we're building that changes the way that insurance companies work, no one's built this before. So what does it need to look like? How does it operate? There is so much greenfield work. And what that means is there's a ton of opportunities for innovation for team members.
Mhm.
And so it's a very engaging space. And what I hear a lot from candidates, they're looking because they can't have enough impact, they're not growing.
Mhm.
And I believe, that we're doing a reasonably good job of giving people a lot of space for individual impact. And I get the impression people feel like they're growing and becoming better engineers. I guess you'd have to ask them directly because I'm probably biased.
That's great. How involved are you in the day-to-days of engineering at Federato?
I would say I'm very involved in that we're still at this super early phase with 18 members of the team. Everyone reports to me.
Okay.
So I've not built a structure from a management perspective. We built a structure from an execution perspective. I'm a big believer in small squads that
Mhm.
are independent, that own their roadmaps. And so
Mhm.
that's what we focused on. So we have these small squads that are TL driven, and that's been working really well. I have three squads. I'm building out a fourth squad right now.
Okay.
Um, the I guess the bigger challenges that we're facing as we grow is eventually we'll have to have managers,
Yeah.
right? Well, we will have to do that. Um, and we're figuring out our process as we go and trying to make it more efficient. But, I meet with every engineer every week. And what I try to drive, and this is going back to philosophy,
Mhm.
top down, trying to drive North Stars. So, what direction is good? Provide guidance from metrics frameworks and
Mhm.
provide guardrails so that people can innovate, but they can tell quickly if they're going in the wrong direction, and then supporting bottom up the innovation and the direction coming from the team.
Mhm.
And so I'm involved in conversations, around people's innovation and giving them some feedback. Uh, and then we have the demo days where they get to show off what they're doing. And so what that's done is really moved our platform forward an immense amount. The last year we've moved forward a ton, and it's not, you know, me saying we need to build this, and you see it on a schedule. Not
Really?
at all. It's all, the team driving the right set of things being done in the right order, in the right way. And I think that has led to both, dramatic progress and engagement and fun.
That's really awesome. As a final note, what are you personally most excited about for Federato in the upcoming, let's say, year or 2 years?
Yeah. So I think right now we're building out this platform is getting a chance to, as I was suggesting, really define a new way for insurance companies to work. If we really do this well, we really see that our platform will be the way that they think of building their applications that are now going to be real time, data driven, ML insights being created and impacting how humans can make decisions, not replacing people, giving them the ability to make better decisions. That last part, ML and decision making, that's going to move a lot over the next 2 to 3 years.
Fine.
As there's more data, the technology now is incredible, and we're just going to be able to do more and more there. And so seeing, AI being used in a really practical way, not to replace people, but to enhance them, which for me is, the more interesting direction, uh, is, I think, one of the things, I'm most excited about.
That's really good to hear. Well, thank you so much, Tim, for joining us today for Spotlight. For those who are interested in learning more about the roles that Tim's hiring, feel free to refer to his page that's attached at the bottom of this video. Again, thank you so much, Tim, for joining us today, and we'll chat soon.
Thanks so much, Rissa.